Hey guys, welcome to today's video, and in this one I wanted to share with you my current water carrying setup and how that's changed over the years. So before we have a look at how I currently carry water, let me show you basically how I used to do it and some of the issues that I came across and why I changed. So starting off, I pretty much did what seems to be what most people do and went with a bladder. Now, I went through a few different bladders. My most kind of common and popular one was an Osprey. Similar to this, I had their older model, etc. as well. But I also used your Camelback type ones, also tried a few no-name ones. And they all had pretty similar issues, leading me to kind of move away from them. Another thing which I generally used, because I used the bladder, I used a water bottle. Now, the water bottle, again, like you see most people, especially starting out, was a hard plastic Nalgene style of water bottle. Now, straight off the bat, you can pretty much tell that the two issues with these two things is weight. They're definitely not light. Quite hard plastic and quite a lot of plastic in this one and other bits and pieces, including the hose, etc. definitely start to add up. A few of the main issues with the bladder itself was, well, first and foremost, leaking. The body of the bladder was generally quite good. Where most of the issues occurred was actually towards the bottom. Now, these newer Osprey ones, they're pretty well reinforced down the bottom there. But even still, I had one of these leak down here, and it was pretty much the final straw, and I started to kind of switch it out. This is another one that I had that came with one of my packs, but really I don't use it anymore. Some other kind of downsides with the bladder is water management. So you never really see how much water you have left unless you stop. You pretty much almost always have to unpack some things from your pack and then be able to take the bladder out and have a look. So when you're passing rivers and streams, etc., you don't know, well, maybe I should fill up, maybe I shouldn't fill up. You're not as efficient with, carrying water basically, which can lead to, either carrying way too much or running out of water, which is not really a good situation to be in. The other thing, with the water management is that you don't really learn how much you drink in certain situations if you're not constantly kind of monitoring your water. With something like a bottle which you take out, you see how much you have left. Obviously, like I said, if you're passing a stream, you can gather whether you need to fill up, etc. But for future trips, given certain conditions, temperatures, how hard the hike is going to be, etc., you can then better plan for how much water you need for certain sections, for the whole trip, or even when you're doing a trip where you're not expecting to be able to resupply, or you have a better idea of exactly how much water you need to carry. So again, it just leads to more efficient ways of carrying your water, or being able to more efficiently know how much water you need to carry. Stops you from, again, having too much or having too little. So another common problem with the bladder type setup is that it's not really multi-use, and that's why I would carry a bottle with me anyway. Now, what I mean by the multi-use thing is that the bladder pretty much lived in the pack. So if you wanted to go and cook some food, or if you're going, to sleep in the tent at night or whatever, you would have to take the bladder out of the pack, which again is quite the pain in the backside, and then carry it with you to be able to have water by your side. If you're going to cook and you're going to use the water, it's often quite a big pain to unscrew the bladder and kind of tip the water out without it having to go anywhere. So often, like I said, I'd just carry a bottle with me because I could easily have it handy with me when I was cooking, when we were doing short little trips around the campsite for little day hikes, etc. Or, inside the tent, it was just much easier to have by my side than, mucking around with the bladder setup. Now, pretty much finally, in the last kind of straw was, I got a new water filter. I went with a Sawyer Squeeze. And again, this thing is not compatible by any stretch of the imagination with the soya squeeze filter. So again, I needed to carry a bottle with me anyway, and this thing wasn't compatible either. And again, it's quite heavy duty, hard, heavy plastic. So I decided to really just change my whole water carrying system. And currently what I use is just a plain old-fashioned water bottle. This is just from Coles, but also, you know, might use a Mount Franklin water bottle. A lot of people use the smart water bottles out there. They're a bit harder to get here in Australia, so you know, these 1.5 litre bottles from the shops do absolutely just fine. And apart from, you know, that compatibility with the soy squeeze, there's actually quite a few benefits to just using bottles. One big thing is the weight. This is so much lighter than a hard plastic bottle or even a bladder type setup. Now, you can get lighter bladders than this Osprey one, but they're often quite flimsy. And when something full of water, which, you know, is carrying your water, which is quite important, is sitting right next to, or right inside your pack next to the sleeping bag, your cooking gear, and all this other, you know, your warm clothes, etc., you really want to make sure that you have a reasonably tough and not the cheapest, thinnest, lightest bladder holding all that water. So, you know, again, this much lighter and being much tougher than a bladder. Now, I made a pretty big point about the efficiency of carrying water, and that bladders really aren't that efficient. You know, you can't really tell how much you're drinking, whether you should fill up, whether you shouldn't fill up. You can't really develop an idea of how much you do drink unless, again, you're constantly checking, pulling the bladder out, etc. With bottles, it's much easier to do that, because obviously when you pull it out, you can see exactly how much you're drinking, and it makes life a lot easier. One of the downsides with bottles, though, is that they can be a lot harder to you know, drink on the go. Whereas this, you know, the hose often kind of pops over your shoulder and you can quickly have a drink. Now, the way to get around this is by the type of pack you have. My current pack, the Osprey Exos 48, they have the mesh pockets on the side, and on the side of the mesh pocket, so it's got two entrances from the top and also from the side. These bottles can actually sit inside the side entrance for the mesh pocket, and you can actually reach around quite easily and take the bottle out without having to stop. My new backpack, which is only a few days away from arriving, I've ordered shoulder pockets basically for 600 ml water bottles, or 500, or we'll see what kind of fits in there best. So again, I can be on the move and I can easily just drink from the bottle from my shoulder, kind of getting around that issue of convenience that the bladder was, you know, is kind of known for, and why most people go for this as their water carrying solution. Finally, a downside that people kind of argue, and I don't disagree with it, is that these are worse for the environment. Definitely, if you're just buying this for one trip and you're throwing it away, probably, or definitely not as good for the environment as something like a bladder, which you can reuse a lot more. It's probably, they are a lot harder wearing if they don't leak. But the thing is, you can reuse these. Like, you know, I take this to work, I go to the gym, I use this bottle. There's absolutely no problem with reusing these plastic bottles. They obviously have a shorter lifespan than something like this, but they do the job for you know, many trips, or just kind of your everyday life, which I guess is more multi-purpose, so that can only really be a good thing. Now, in saying all that, I still use bladders. They're not my main solution when it comes to carrying my water that I'm gonna drink from while I'm actually hiking. Go with the bottle for that. But if I'm going on trips where I know the water source is going to be quite far away, or if I'm going to a dry camp where there is no water, say for example Mount Solitary, there's no water on the summit there, so you have to take everything up with you. And for that, I've been using most recently just the soy squeeze bags. These are the newer bags. My soya really isn't that old. I know some people have had issues with leaks around the opening here. Haven't had a problem with them. so far. They've proved to be quite good. They're quite simple, light, just, you know, a bag to carry water in, so there's no dramas there. But I've also used things like the Nalgene canteens, which have been quite good. I actually did have one leak on me. Towards the bottom here, there's quite a bit of kind of folding plastic, because these things open up with a wide base, so they're easier to kind of sit, and all that extra folding did cause a little leak, so wasn't too happy about that, but they're a pretty good solution. And if I'm going for a long trip, usually kayaking, where it's going to be salt water or dirty water, I'll carry something like this MSR dromedary bag. This is 10 liters, so that's also a nice tough bladder type thing, which again, I don't drink from these directly, but if I'm going on a trip where, you know, water isn't going to be easily accessed and I need to carry quite a few liters, I'll definitely use bladders instead of packing, you know, 5 or 6 or 7 of these. It just makes more sense. So that's about it for this video. I hope you guys got something out of it. It's been a big change for me from when I first started to kind of how I hike and carry water and drink what I drink from now. It's helped in a lot of ways. You know, in efficiency, there's a lot less leaks and problems with this kind of setup. It's a lot lighter, and I'm more efficient with carrying water. I know how much I use, I know how quickly or how much I might need for certain trips, so it allows me to plan a lot better than what I did when I was carrying a bladder and kind of a hard bottle setup. So yeah, if you do have any questions, feel free to ask, and I hope you guys got something out of it. See you guys in the next video, and as always, happy trails.